Okay, listen the moment.
You going to read it? No?
Okay.
No, it's all right. It's okay. It's okay. So we've recently seen a draft release for Circular 36 that's come out from the government, which will undoubtedly have an impact on the real estate market if it's implemented. I think the key thing that we really need to look at here is obviously the implications of what this draft 36 will have. The implications are that they want to obviously reduce lending in the market and reduce the amount of credit that's been released in the market in the coming year, in 2016. 2015 we saw a big increase in lending over the course of the year, up 18 to 20% in 2015, and this is really an implementation to try and bring that under control and maybe reduce the lending going forward. Now, in theory, in principle that's a good idea. I mean, we've seen a lot of credit coming into the market, but our view on this draft decree is that rather than implying it across the board, across all lending, it should be on a more case-by-case basis. So we really want it to be, rather than a blanket decree, we want it to be looked at on a case-by-case basis, and if it's a developer or an individual, you look at their credit rating themselves. This is how it's done in other countries around the world. So if a developer is very highly leveraged, if they already have a lot of debt, then obviously they should, the level of credit or level of debt should be lowered. But if there's developers with very, very good track record, then there's no reason why they cannot be, continue to lend to those developers or people. So I think it should be on a case-by-case basis rather than across the board.
Okay.
Làm lại.
Làm
Chỉ
lại.
nhiều. Chỉ nhiều. Không sao. Không sao. Rồi.
Okay. Listen the book.
Rồi được.
So, moving on to question 2. So the Vietnam real estate have suggested that it's going to have a negative effect on the real estate market. I think that there's an element of truth to that, and we would certainly agree to that to a certain extent. We feel that we're in a very early stage of a market recovery. We only really saw the real estate market starting to improve maybe in the middle of 2014, and certainly improved quite dramatically in 2015. So we're still in the early stages of a recovery of the property market. We had a number of years of very soft market conditions. So it's a little bit early to start implementing sort of cooling measures that we maybe see in Singapore at the moment, or maybe in Hong Kong, because those markets did become very, very overheated, and the government and the state banks had to implement sort of cooling measures. So it's early stages, but at the same time we also would like rather than seeing big bubbles and big spikes and troughs in the property market, we would prefer to see a steady increase in the property market, a more sustainable increase, and ensure that we don't see the types of bubbles that we saw in the previous cycle. So again, I think that if there is a slight cooling measure to slow some of the credit, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it will help to sustain a prolonged and increased property cycle. Okay. So the main parts of Circular 36 is all about trying to obviously reduce the risk of, I suppose, a property bubble, and reduce the risk of increased overextending by certain companies and individuals. So I think there's nothing in particular that we would really draw out from Circular 36. I think, again, for us, we feel it's more on a case by case basis, and each company or developer or investor, that's the way it should be addressed, rather than trying to issue a complete blanket sort of decree across all sectors. It's on a case by case basis. Keys has no adjustment. What would happen to the rest of the okay. So I think if we don't see Circular 36 come into fruition, and it's not implemented, we'll continue to see an increase in development activity, an increase in the real estate market continuing as it is. Again, what we always advise investors, whether it's developers or investors in real estate, or just individuals looking at buying property, you need to obviously be aware of your own financial situation, and make sure that you're not overextending yourself and taking on more debt than you think that you can actually pay, and not really betting on the market improving all the time. What we've learned from history in Vietnam is that the property market cycles are much shorter than more mature markets. So the cycles here tend to be maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But so you need to be prepared and need to be a little bit more conservative when you're looking at taking on debt and taking on more lending. So that's the overall message, is that if there's no change to the current lending provisions, we just advise our clients just to be a little bit more aware of market conditions and really understand the market before taking on big liabilities.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ok, có
Thank you.
đủ không?
Cảm ơn. Thank you.